Professor Malott with another installment of the Weekly Overview. This is week 7, which means that we are getting ever closer to the midway mark of the semester. It's going to go fast, folks, from here on out. Last week, in week 6, we discussed rhetoric. You learned more about how writers consider genre, audience, and purpose to make rhetorical choices that narrow the audience's angle of vision. Remember the way that the author chooses things to be seen, right? That's the angle of vision, the lens that they are showing the audience things through. But they also use techniques of persuasion through the rhetorical appeals. So we have logos, which is the appeal to the intelligence or to logic. We have ethos, the appeal to credibility or reliability. And then we have pathos, which is the appeal to the emotions. Those are all various ways that writers and speakers can persuade a particular audience, right? It's not going to persuade all audiences equally, but it will persuade a particular audience, usually the audience that the writer wants to reach. So if you need to, you can go back and review those materials from week 6. There are print materials and videos that will help to cement your understanding when it comes to rhetoric, the rhetorical situation, and rhetorical appeals. This week, we are getting deeper into rhetoric, and we will actually be looking at an example student rhetorical analysis essay. And you'll start also some pre-writing work, thinking about your advertisement that you chose in week 6, and maybe even start drafting that rhetorical analysis essay. Please remember that the rough draft for essay number 2 is not due until next week, week 8. On October 15th. So in addition to that, we will also be having some discussion on multimodality. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the various modes and what multimodality is and how that relates to this rhetorical analysis assignment. So please hang tight for that explanation. I will not be doing a separate video for that, but I will walk you through some of the materials as well as the example essay, so that you have a better understanding of what we're trying to achieve with the rhetorical analysis essay. So the objectives for this week are to understand the 5 modes of multimodality, to discuss the use of multimodality in an advertisement, that's the discussion board assignment, to learn about the basics of rhetorical analysis, we'll do that through the example student essay, reflect upon rhetoric and everyday communication, analyze rhetorical effectiveness of a given text, and summarize the basic strategies of your chosen advertisement. So let's look at the reading materials. There are a few things that I want to show you here from the University of Mississippi Rhet Lab. The first is what is a mode? And that is a reading thing. So this just introduces you to the idea of mode, what it is, and how it's different from medium, right? So it points out that a mode is different from medium because a medium is the substance through which a communication is conveyed. And I know that's kind of a nebulous thing, right? What does that actually mean? So they say examples of a visual medium, for instance, would be photography, painting, or film. So if you think of medium as the way in which a communication is presented, it's a little bit different than the mode. When a given text uses more than one mode, we call that multimodal. That just means more than one, right? Multi is many, and modes are ways that in which we present the information. So I think this visual here is helpful in understanding. So we have this larger circle of multimodal, and then we have the 5 modes. And those 5 modes are visual, the things that we see; linguistic, which means things like text and writing; right? Linguistic or alphabetic is sometimes also paired with linguistic. Then we have spatial, the way that things occupy space. Gestural means things like gestures, right? Movement of the body in space. And lastly, we have oral, not ORAL, but oral, AURAL, having to do with hearing, the things that we hear, so sound and that kind of stuff. So this is an overview page, and then if you click next on that, that will take you to the next, which will explain deeper the 5 different modes. So make sure that you read this and understand the examples that they give. You can even click on the next page if you want to read a little bit about examples of multimodal texts, what that actually means. And there is a little practice quiz at the end of that page, that 3rd page, which just shows you examples of multimodal texts and gives you an opportunity to do a little bit of practice with the understanding there. So those are 2 readings that will help you a bit. With multimodality, and that is related to the week 7 discussion board, which I will show you in a moment. I will call that up, and you'll be talking about multimodality in this discussion. So read through the introduction there, take a look at the image that's portrayed in this public service announcement from the CDC. I also have provided the alt text if you are having some trouble with vision, and then post your observations on the above image. So I want you to pay attention to the various elements and how they might work together to effectively present a certain message. So I want you to look at the written words, the linguistic mode, look at the visual elements. What things do you see? While this isn't a commercial, think about what if this were turned into a commercial? What kind of audio elements would you see? What kind of movements, the spatial aspects of it, expressions and gestures. So the idea is for you to think about those elements and how they are rhetorically effective in multimodal text, especially advertisements. So again, this is a discussion board assignment. It will be due on the 8th. And then of course, I would like you to interact with a couple of peers posts and have that response posted by Wednesday the 11th. So that is all dealing with multimodality. So why am I focusing on this strange world of multimodality? You know, maybe it's not something you've been exposed to previously in your other English classes. And the reason for that is we are primarily analyzing advertisements, right? You may have chosen a print advertisement, or you may have chosen a commercial, right? So one of the things that you need to do, because advertising isn't primarily the linguistic or alphabetic mode, right? It's not just words on a page. It's usually incorporating several things, right? We have linguistic, we have text, right? The words of the advertisement that we read, but we also have a lot of visuals going on. So you can think about placement of items on a page, or if you're looking at a commercial, the intentional placement of people and objects and how they might move through space in the commercials. So think about that kind of multimodality and the various things that are done either in a print advertisement or in a commercial. And keep in mind that those things are done intentionally. They have a reason for being done that way. And if you can think of it in that way, it will start to make sense as you approach the rhetorical analysis paper. apologize for the awkward pause there at the end. As I was talking, I was also looking at the screen looking through the various materials that I presented for you and realized that I had forgotten to link a couple of things that are very important for you this week as you move towards thinking about your essay and maybe even starting to draft it. So a couple of the other things that I have shared for you in addition to the information about modality and multimodality is focusing on thesis statement. I feel it's important that you have some information on thesis statements. So we have a reading from the University of Mississippi Ret Lab dealing with the analytic thesis. So this is a very important page for you to read. So you understand that the analytic thesis has a very special way of dealing with information and presenting information within the essay. So make sure that you read through that. There is also a handout on the rhetorical analysis thesis statement, as well as a short video from Scriber on how to write a strong thesis statement. So let's take a look at this handout on the rhetorical analysis thesis statement. That's a mouthful today. So for a strong thesis statement for your rhetorical analysis essay, what's really key to keep in mind is to try to avoid phrases using the first person. Now, we just got through the literary narrative. No. Oh my God, what is wrong with me today? The literacy narrative, which was first person, right? Most of you wrote in first person. Actually, all of you wrote in first person because it's a personal narrative. However, for this rhetorical analysis paper that you're writing, this is a more academic essay, which means that you need to avoid first person, especially in your thesis statement. So avoid those phrases that start with I believe, or I think, or even I feel. That tends to weaken your writing a little bit and makes it a little bit wishy-washy. For the rhetorical analysis and for other academic essays where you're kind of presenting a type of argument or trying to persuade someone to grasp what it is that you're trying to say, it's really best to avoid those more subjective statements like I believe, I think, or I feel. You really want a strong and firm thesis statement because it serves as a guide to your essay for your reader. It helps your reader kind of follow the map through your essay. It will also help you to assert your conclusion and take a stand on the author's rhetorical strategies that are used in the advertisement. The rhetorical analysis thesis statement also states what techniques you'll be analyzing and the impact of those techniques on the effectiveness of the text. So there are some really wonderful examples below for strong thesis statements. I'm not going to read through them. You're more than capable of reading through them and understanding how a rhetorical analysis thesis statement handles the information that you are analyzing, right? So take a minute to read through those and understand what's going on. And then below, you want to also keep in mind the things not to do in your thesis statement, right? So a strong thesis statement for a rhetorical analysis or for any other type of paper is not a simple statement of your topic, right? So you're not going to say this paper will analyze the commercial done by Pepsi, right? That really doesn't tell you anything about what you're trying to achieve, right? We need to know more. The audience needs to know more than just what your topic is. It also isn't a broad statement. It has to be very specific. and focused, right? It isn't a statement of facts or statistics. Remember that you want to answer the question how, why, or so what, right? Why is it worth my time to read this? Instead of just being a statement of facts or statistics. It also is not a summary of the author's essay or the text that you're analyzing, and it is not a statement of what you're going to do in the essay. So it's not an announcement of what you're going to attempt to do in the essay. You see that a lot in first year writing. And while some people think this is a great way to have students do their papers and present their research, it really isn't the best way. It's not the most effective way. So we're going to try to move away from the announcement in the thesis statement. This is what I'm going to do. So please follow me, right? That kind of stuff. You don't want to do that in your thesis statement. So they do have a few examples of weak thesis statements. So make sure that you read through those as well so you understand what not to do in your rhetorical analysis thesis statement. I think this is a really wonderful handout. I'm glad that I found it. It was created by the University, Virginia Wesleyan College, sorry, their learning center. So it's a good handout and really good information, solid information relating to not just rhetorical analysis thesis statements, but also any paper. So it's a really good handout for thesis statements. And again, that's related also to some of the information that you will see in Scribber in that very short, quick video dealing with strong thesis statements. So I'm going to take a few minutes here to look at this example rhetorical analysis essay. Now, this essay was written by a University of Cincinnati student back in 2014. It was published in a book that is put out by the UC English department at the Clifton campus, the Student Guide to English Composition 1001. So it takes many examples of student writing, puts it in there, and this is kind of a handbook for students to understand some of the things that we're trying to do in not only English 099, but also 1001. So chances are pretty good that once you get to 1001, you will be writing another rhetorical analysis essay. I don't expect your essays in prep comp to be anything comparable to a 1001 rhetorical analysis essay. However, I do provide this example for you so you can understand how a student might go about not only creating a creative title, right? Coming up with an interesting title that might intrigue the audience, but also come up with a topic sentence, as well as the thesis statement here. So I'm just going to talk about a few things that I've observed about this essay that make it a fairly decent example. It's not the best. It's not perfect, but it's a pretty decent example of acceptable student writing in English 1001. So we have the title, first of all, Natural Beauty in a Bottle. Is it possible? A very interesting title, right? So it gives you a clue of what this might be talking about. And then we see right off the bat, this student is dealing with advertisements. So they make a general statement to try to interest the audience. Advertisements in today's society seek to convince or persuade an audience to purchase a certain product, right? So it makes a big statement, an overall statement about advertisement, what the actual goal of advertising is, so on and so forth. And they continue on and on. And then they come down right about midway through the paragraph, the last couple of sentences. The makers of advertisements utilize 4 rhetorical elements to make an ad successful while grabbing the attention of the viewers. They are called ethos, pathos, logos, and kairos. We haven't really talked about kairos in this class. I may have just mentioned it. Kairos is essentially just timeliness, taking advantage of certain events in time to help steer the thing in the right direction. So here is the meat. That's kind of a setup to the meat of the thesis statement. Remember that your thesis statement does not have to be one sentence. It can be two sentences. It doesn't, you don't have to try to jam it all into one sentence if you can't do that effectively, right? So the student continues, in CoverGirl's Nature Luxe Silk Foundation advertisement with Taylor Swift, these four elements, ethos, pathos, logos, and kairos, work to sell this product, but also create a contradiction in the idea of naturalness through artificial makeup. So you can see here in this statement, the student has done several things that are really important. They have mentioned the advertisement, specifically CoverGirl. So they mentioned the company, CoverGirl. They have mentioned the product, Nature Luxe Silk Foundation, and they have specifically named the spokesperson in the advertisement that they are taking a look at, Taylor Swift. And then they say, this is how, these are the rhetorical elements that the advertiser has used. These four elements work to sell this product. And then they say something more, right? And that is the cultural commentary, right? The subtext of the advertisement. They continue, but also create a contradiction in the idea of naturalness through artificial makeup. So this is the student's slant on this advertisement. They are making some kind of a judgment. They are saying something about it besides this is how the advertiser sells the product. And I think that is something that's really crucial in understanding what rhetorical analysis is all about. You really get to not just the general message, but the subtext, right? The subtext is what Warner refers to in that reading that that we read as a preview for the rhetorical analysis assignment, right? So if you read through this further, you'll see how the student actually organizes the essay. They tend to focus, they organize it by focusing on each of the four rhetorical elements that they have chosen to speak about, the rhetorical appeals, right? And they go point by point. So it's similar to how you would organize the 5-paragraph essay, but it uses more than 5 paragraphs, right? If you think of that 5-paragraph essay as just kind of an overall organizing principle, it tends to make more sense. So here we expect the person will be talking about ethos, right? Or the reliability or credibility, right? So, well, actually, the first paragraph, they actually describe the advertisement, what's taking place in the advertisement. So we can pretty much understand the ad without actually seeing the ad. However, I have provided a visual for you so that you can actually take a look at the ad and see what the student is discussing in the ad. Next, they go on to speaking about ethos. They address ethos. They give several examples from the advertisement. And they talk about Taylor Swift, so on and so forth. Then they talk about the naturalness and airiness of the advertisement. So here I think they're talking about pathos or maybe logos, right? Yes, okay. It's talking about logos. So the words that they use to describe the product, and stuff like that. So that is kind of a little bit of a stretch, not bad, but a little bit of a stretch. It's acceptable. Either way, it urges them to buy the product and to feel good about it. And then they go from a discussion of logos to the discussion of pathos, making the customer feel good about the product, so on and so forth. So yeah, either pathos and logos or logos and pathos, either one. Yeah, I think this is logos. And then they talk about Kairos, right? They talk about the timeliness. This advertisement came out in January 2011, the same time Taylor Swift had just released and was touring for her new album, Speak Now. And so they talk about that a little bit more. And then their conclusion is really that social commentary that they're making, the cultural commentary, the subtext of the advertisement here at the end. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paragraphs for this is probably a 1,000 word essay. 4 to 6 pages was probably the requirement for it. So of course, keep in mind that the requirements are a little bit different for our class because it is English 099. And I don't expect you to get as in-depth as this student did with their analysis. However, at least make some kind of an attempt, right? Here, I will show you the CoverGirl ad. Hopefully it comes up for you. I think I've done everything correctly. So you can see, and I've made it big enough so that you can look at all the fine print, take a look at the product as well as the very big image of Taylor Swift, right? So this is probably, it says introducing Taylor Swift. So this was probably one of the first ads that she did in that ad campaign for CoverGirl. I know that she was involved in some commercials and a lot of print ads as well because she was her spokesperson. So that is the example rhetorical analysis essay. Again, you don't have your rough draft due until next week, so don't panic about it. I do want to talk about the second assignment that you have this week, and that is the worksheet, the advertisement summary. So I call it a worksheet. It's not really a worksheet. It can be a text entry box or a file upload. And I want you to use the ad that you chose for the discussion board assignment in week 6. Remember, the ad that you choose is the ad that you will be writing the rhetorical analysis paper about. I think that's very important for you to remember. I scaffold these assignments and I do it for this reason, right? I want you to have some direction. I want you to know where you're going, which means, first of all, you have to choose the ad, right? And then you have to start thinking about the ad and maybe think about summarizing what the ad is doing, right? So part of that challenge in writing your rhetorical analysis paper of a primarily visual text, that's, the commercial or the advertisement, is that you need to be able to summarize what the ad is about. So if you again look at the example rhetorical analysis essay, you look specifically at that second paragraph that describes the ad, it summarizes what the ad is about, and that way you provide your audience with context so that they can better understand your analysis of the rhetorical strategies used in the ad. So I want you to aim for about 250 words. If it's less than that, that's okay. But I don't want, 1 or 2 sentences as a summary. That's just not going to fly. You need to think a little bit deeper. So some of the information that would be important for your audience to know would be the title of the ad. Sometimes you can see that if you're searching on YouTube. If you can't find the name of the specific ad, then at least include the name of the company and or product, right? What is the ad for? What are they trying to do? What are they selling, right? Is there some subtext or other purpose behind the ad besides selling a product, right? Can you figure out what that might be? You might not have it pinned down yet, and that's okay. Is there a celebrity or other notable person in the ad? Remember, again, in the example, they chose an ad that had Taylor Swift in it. So if you have somebody notable in the ad, then by all means, that is something that your audience needs to know, right? What is the ad doing or saying? In one sentence, try to describe the general gist of the ad. Next, who is the audience? Remember that advertisers have a certain audience in mind for a product that they're advertising, right? What is the target audience? Who are the people that might be most interested in what this advertiser has to say, right? So try to be specific instead of saying anybody who sees the ad, right? Remember that advertisers deliberately want to attract a certain audience. And then lastly, what do you think is the main rhetorical strategy of the ad? It could be the appeals, it could be something else besides the appeals, right? It could be the use of repetition, um, or certain other rhetorical elements that come into play, all of those modes that you have just learned about. So try to compose this as a complete paragraph using complete sentences. If you're struggling to create a paragraph, you can approach the assignment in a question answer format. The purpose is just to get some forward momentum on this project, right? To get some pre-writing done in preparation for that rough draft that's due next week. Okay. So hopefully that answers any questions that you might have. If you still aren't clear on what we're trying to do here, or if there's anything that's not working, if any of the links are not functioning for you, please let me know so that I can go in, figure out what the problem is, and fix it for you, because all of this information is really, really important for helping you understand the rhetorical analysis. So good luck, everybody. And I look forward to reading more about your advertisements. And if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. Take care. Have a great week. Bye bye.